In this lesson, you'll learn about the cursor class and objects and how they're used in content providers. Cursors are used in a number of Android application functions in addition to content providers. For example, they're also used to supply data to the list functions that display data in a user interface. So we'll explore its application in other lessons to come. Their use specifically in content providers is as a vehicle to contain result sets from database query methods. Let's look at an example of this in our Notepad app. In the Notepad provider class at statement 259, the return from a query function is defined as a cursor. Now let's look down at statement 317, where a cursor C is defined as a result of a query to our SQLite database. Next, in statement 328, we use the setNotificationURI method of the cursor class to tell the cursor what URI to watch for changes in source data. And finally, to statement 329, where the cursor is returned as a result of this content provider query. Remember, we'll be studying more about database queries in our lessons on SQLite database functions. And now back to the sequence of cursor uses. It's a little hard to follow, but what's happening is this. Remember our content provider classes and objects graphic that you see here. The cursor is being used to carry the result back through the chain of query methods to the content interface. So what happens next with the cursor there? To understand this, let's look at more detail about the cursor class and objects. The cursor provides read-write access to a result set returned from a database query. And here's how the access is carried out with cursor methods. First, there's a group of methods that tracks and moves the cursor along the rows of the data subset, such as move to first, move to next, move to last, etc. There's a second group of methods that can pull data out of the subset using a column index parameter. And notice that the data can be pulled in any primitive data type, such as double, float, long, etc. The third group of methods operates on the data subset as a whole, such as getting a column count and getting column names. So what happens is that a cursor is returned from a query and passed to functions that use the cursor to work with the data in the result set from the query, such as the cursor adapter in our Notepad app, which is used to list the notes that we see on our user interface. Another way to look at this is that a cursor is an object-oriented way to package data with its access methods. And now let's look at some examples of the use of a cursor in our Notepad sample app. In the Notes List class at statement 103, the cursor is retrieved using a wrapper class managed query. And managed query was deprecated, that is, replaced in API 11 with the cursor loader class. And I'm going to leave the details of all of this for future lessons on database management. For now, our focus is on content providers, and it's enough to understand that the cursor is used to return data from the query to the database. Now, further on in statement 128, we see that a cursor is used in a simple cursor adapter to supply data for a list view object that displays data on the user interface. And the simple cursor adapter was also deprecated in API 11 in favor of the cursor loader. And I'm going to leave the discussion of these objects for a future lesson on the user interface and list displays. I realize that we're looking at the Notepad app in pieces here and there, because the app includes a number of Android capabilities that we're covering in multiple lessons. This approach to examining its code makes more sense than going from beginning to end in the app, as we've done with some other sample apps. So bear with me, eventually all the pieces of the Notepad app will come together. That's our lesson on cursors. As I've said, we'll see cursors used in a number of places throughout the course. Now let's look at some more aspects of the content provider in the next few lessons.